Thank you, everyone, for making it to the September 10th, 2024 NEMSIS training. Again, thank you very much for making it coming out today. We did change the date of our usual training. You usually find these trainings in the first Tuesday of the month. But we were accommodating some schedules here to make this today, so I appreciate everybody uh, moving their schedules a little bit so that we could spend the time today here with our good friend Josh. Today, we're going to be talking about medical coding systems that are used by NEMSIS, and that is ICD-10, RxNorm, and SNOMED. And so, without further ado, Josh, if you'd go ahead and take it away from here.
Thanks, Chris. Welcome, everyone. I'm Josh Legler. I'm an EMS Data Consultant and contractor to the NEMSIS Technical Assistance Center. My job today is to help you learn a little more about medical code systems that are used in the NEMSIS data standard. So first, what is a code system? What do we mean when we say code system? Some considerations about interoperability and the use of code systems. And then today we're going to specifically dive into these three code systems that are used in the NEMSIS standard: ICD-10 CM, RxNorm, and SNOMED CT. So that'll be the agenda for today. First, what is a code system? This definition comes from CMS. Code systems are a collection of concepts, ideas, with unique identifiers that exist in some sort of structure. The code system structure should provide each concept with a code system specific meaning, a concept identifier, a code, and a string description, the name, and a definition of the concept meaning. I've bolded concepts, unique identifiers, and structure. A code system is not just a list of codes. So NEMSIS has a lot of lists of codes within it. For example, if you look at the patient's race, you'll see half a dozen codes, and each of those codes has a label. But a code system has not just those unique identifiers and labels. It also has some structure to it. And we're going to see that in each of the code systems that we're going to look at today, where the code system relates the codes to each other, the concepts to each other within a structure. And each of the code systems that we look at today has a little bit different structure that they use for their particular problem that they're trying to address. In interoperability, code systems are important because it means that, if everyone is using the same code systems, when they transfer data to each other, they can all reference those code systems and draw meaning from the data that they're receiving from each other. And it's not just a bunch of raw codes, and who knows what to do with them. Code systems are specified in the United States Core Data for Interoperability, or USCDI, and it often recommends or requires certain code systems to be used for certain data related to healthcare or medical care. Health Level 7, or HL7, may recommend or require certain code systems to be used. And then in the NEMSIS standard, it's almost always the case that NEMSIS mandates one single code system to be used for a particular data element. Let's look at what I'm talking about here with these three approaches. This is USCDI, and this is the USCDI page for procedures. So the activity performed on a patient as part of provision of care. And you'll see the part I've highlighted there that USCDI says, hey, when you record data about procedures done on a patient, here are your options. You can use SNOMED CT. You can use current procedural terminology, or CPT. You can use the Code on Dental Procedures and Nomenclature, or CDT. And optionally, you can use ICD-10 procedure coding system to code procedures that were done. So when a medical provider, a healthcare provider, is creating some information, they're going to share that information with some other healthcare provider or someone else. when they document their procedures, they need to use codes for those procedures. They can't just type in plain text, and they need to use codes from one of these several code systems, SNOMED, CPT, or CDT, and optionally, they could use codes from ICD-10 PCS. So there's a kind of a menu of different code systems they could use. If you look at HL7 in the clinical document architecture, this is the specification for how you would encode a procedure that was done on a patient. And you'll see that they give a whole variety of options here. The procedure could be coded using LOINC, SNOMED CT, CPT4, ICD-10 PCS, HCPCS, or CDT2. And if it was a social determinant of health intervention, it would come from a specific value set that HL7 has defined. So HL7 is saying, leaving it quite open, hey, all of these code sets, you could use any of these code systems. Okay, what would that look like in an HL7 document? This is just a small snippet from an HL7 clinical document architecture file. And you see that it starts with an element called procedure. So this is a procedure that was done on a patient. And you'll see that one of the elements in the procedure is code. And that code has several attributes. So they're actually telling you, whoever generated this data is telling you, here's the code for this procedure that was done on the patient. Not only are we giving you the code, we're also going to tell you which code system we used. So in this case, SNOMED CT. And we're also going to give you the name of this procedure that correlates with this code that we gave. It's a placement of stent. So that's how it's done in HL7. So you could plop in any code system that HL7 allows, and then the accompanying code and display name for that procedure that was done. So there's a lot of latitude allowed there. Whereas if we look at the NEMSIS standard, here's the data dictionary page for procedure, and it says code list is represented in SNOMED CT. So in NEMSIS, SNOMED CT is the only code system that can be used to represent a procedure that was done by EMS. There are lots of common medical code systems out there. I've put together a list here of some of the most common ones and indicated what kind of aspects of healthcare or medical care they cover. So conditions, medications, procedures, allergies. The ones I've highlighted here are the ones that we're going to dive into today because they are used in the NEMSIS data standard. I'll note that ICD-10 PCS is also used in the NEMSIS data standard for hospital procedures. We're not going to cover that one today, but we are going to look at ICD-10 CM, which is used for conditions, diagnoses, impressions, symptoms, things like that. We're also going to look at RxNorm, which is used for medications and also for allergies, specifically allergies to medications. And then what do you notice about SNOMED CT here? SNOMED CT is kind of it's the full thing. SNOMED CT has information about conditions, codes for conditions, codes for medications, codes for procedures, and codes for allergies. So SNOMED CT is a very large, all-inclusive code system that covers lots of stuff in medical care. Before we dive into each one, I just want to point out that these are updated on a regular basis. ICD-10 CM is updated annually, so new codes are added, some might be removed, discontinued, or labels updated. So that happens annually. They usually come out in June and expect people to start being able to use them in October. Occasionally, ICD-10 CM issues addenda. So like when COVID-19 happened, there was an addendum that came out in the spring of 2020 to add some codes related to COVID-19. RxNorm is updated monthly and even weekly. So anytime the FDA approves a new medication, that could come out in their weekly update. All other changes are kind of saved for their monthly update. And SNOMED CT is updated semi-annually, usually in March and September of each year. So it's important. I want to really get the point across here that software products that have implemented these code systems, which would be NEMSIS compliant products, because these code systems are required by NEMSIS, they got to stay up to date with the code systems. New codes are always coming out on a regular basis, and it's important for software products to refresh their data and get those new codes into their products so they can be used. Lots of times there's going to be new codes that aren't relevant to EMS. They're relevant to some other area of healthcare, but sometimes there are some codes that are very important to EMS. Codes that have been added over recent years might be things like injuries on micromobility devices. That would be an ICD-10 CM. In RxNorm, we had antiretroviral medications for COVID-19. In SNOMED CT, we've had procedures added for longboard or for supraglottic airway devices, things like that. So there are some things important to EMS that are added in these code systems. Okay, we're going to jump into each of the three code systems and spend a few minutes in each of them. The first one I want to cover is ICD-10 CM. So it's the International Classification of Diseases, version 10, clinical modification. ICD-10 is used in lots of places in a NEMSIS patient care report. In some of these data elements, only a specific subset of ICD-10 is allowed, and in other elements, most or all of the codes defined in ICD-10 are allowed. ICD-10 has the longest history by far of the code systems we're going to look at today. It actually, the genesis of ICD-10 was back in 1860 when Florence Nightingale recommended that a code system be developed to categorize diseases and conditions. So you can see the history there over the years. ICD-9, you might have heard of that. That came out in 1978, which sounds like a really long time ago to me. But when I started working in EMS data not too long ago, ICD-9 was still very common. ICD-9 had about 17,000 codes. ICD-10 has about 100,000 codes, so much more extensive. ICD-10 came out in 1990. But it didn't really get broad use in the United States until I'd say probably the last 10 years or so. ICD-10-CM, or clinical modification, is a US specific extension to ICD-10. ICD-10 itself is an international standard maintained by the World Health Organization. That US specific extension, the CM extension, is maintained by the Department of Health and Human Services in the US. Now, interestingly, ICD-10 version 11 has already been released 6 years ago and was supposed to be starting to be used in 2022. So you can look forward to a change coming. I don't know how soon it'll happen in the US because it took a long, long time for ICD-10 to roll out. We'll see what happens. Okay, now, I was talking about structure. ICD-10 is hierarchical in its structure. This is an important aspect of the ICD-10 structure. So any code in ICD-10 is part of a tree or a hierarchy. So I've taken this example here of a code that you see at the bottom, W54.0XXA, which is bitten by dog initial encounter. Okay, so if someone got bitten by a dog and they showed up at the emergency department and this was their first visit for that dog bite, then this is the code they would get. Well, it's in a hierarchy, so you can see that it's a child of W54.0, which is bitten by dog, and that's a child of W54, which is contact with dog. And then that's a child of the code range W50 to W64, which is exposure to animate mechanical forces. So it might be a dog or a cat or a horse or a cow or whatever. All of those are in that section. And then that's all within chapter 20 of ICD-10, which is external causes of morbidity. So what caused the problem that the patient's having. What this means is analytical software, reporting software, should give you the ability to roll up or roll down in these codes. You might not want just a list of all the stuff that happened on EMS calls by the specific code. You might want it rolled up a little bit, a few levels, so that all of the different things that happened in contact with animals, those all kind of roll up into one thing for your analytical purposes. So they'd be recorded, very specific, but you should have the ability to roll up analytically. Let's take a look at this one just to get familiar with some of the information that is available in the code system. There is an official browsing website provided by the CDC, but it's actually pretty hard to use. So I'm using a site called ICD-10data.com. Chris has put the link to that in the chat. Feel free to click on that link yourself and browse around a little bit if you want to. I'm going to show you a couple things in this code here, the W54.0 bitten by dog. One thing you can see here is you can see what years of ICD-10 CM this code has been available in. So it's been available for a lot of years. And you can also see that it has relationships. I'm going to highlight right here for a sec, and then I'll undo the highlight so you can read it. So these codes contain back references that may be, applicable to W54.0. So it's showing those relationships. It shows the code history that's been there for many years. And then it also has an index. So it shows, for example, that a dog bite could be an accidental contact. And then what was it with? It was with a dog. So you can go to these index entries and see those relationships happening between different codes. So you should be able to find, for example, all of the ICD-10 codes that represent an accidental contact, because those have all been indexed. So that's the important kind of extra richness that comes in from a code system, that it's not simply just a code with a label, but it has relationships with other codes, and the concepts all tie together. Okay, so that was ICD-10. All right, I'm going to move on to the next one, which is RxNorm. RxNorm is used in just 3 elements in a patient care report: medication allergies, current medications, and then medications that were administered on the EMS call. RxNorm is US specific, so it's not an international standard. And it aggregates from several source vocabularies. I'm going to show you that list in a second. And its history is not nearly as long as ICD. It goes back to the early 2000s, and the first public release of RxNorm was in 2004. These are all the source vocabularies that it uses. So what they do is they go out to all of these vocabularies and pull all the codes that those vocabularies have issued for various medications, and then they harmonize them into one code system with references and relationships back to these sources. RxNorm has a bunch of term types. So when you're talking about a medication, you might be interested in an ingredient like oxygen or acetaminophen, but you might instead be interested in a specific brand name like Tylenol. Or maybe more specific, a doctor may have prescribed a specific brand name pack to a patient, that they're going to take, this particular medication in this strength, in this form. It might be oral, or it might be, IV, whatever, and they're going to take it, every so often. So it gets very specific in terms of these different types of terms that RxNorm supports, so that a doctor can prescribe a very specific medication. However, often, if you're doing analytical reporting, you might just want to know, hey, I just want to know every time naloxone was given. I don't care if it was Narcan or some other brand. I don't care what the strength of it was or the dose form or how it was packaged. I just want to know naloxone was given. So I'm going to show you how the relationships work. This is a very complex graph here, but every term type has a relationship to other term types, and you can follow the relationships. So in this example, we've got cetirizine as an ingredient, and you can see that Zyrtec is a brand name, and it is the trade name of cetirizine. So RxNorm defines these relationships so that if you have the code for Zyrtec, you can follow the path and find out that it's cetirizine. And even specifically, if it's the Zyrtec cetirizine oral capsule, you can trace the relationships back to the ingredient of cetirizine. I'm going to show you a live example for naloxone. And Chris, if you could put in the link to RxNorm. Again, feel free on your own to follow that link to the RxNorm navigation site. I've brought up here naloxone. Well, I'm going to first look at this relation graph. So here's kind of a real example of that chart that I just showed you. So naloxone is highlighted, and I can see all the things that have naloxone as an ingredient. Here's Narcan over here, but there's these other brand names that all contain naloxone as an ingredient. I can see the different amounts, the different forms like auto-injectors or pre-filled syringes or tablets. I can see injectables versus others, nasal sprays. They're all related back to naloxone. And there's all kinds of additional information here that RxNorm provides. I'm going to click through these tabs a little bit. If I look here, I can see that naloxone first appeared in April 2005, so it's been in RxNorm pretty much since the beginning. I see, it's prescribable, it's a human drug, etc. I can see the source code sets from which RxNorm found this code and all of the references back to what the code for naloxone is in those other code systems. I can look at names. So naloxone's simple, it just has one name. Some medications have multiple names here. And again, the list of sources that they pulled from that had naloxone in their code systems. I'm going to go over to classes. And this gets interesting. I can look here. For example, let's go to mechanism of action. This gives me a chart that tells me that naloxone is an opioid antagonist. And, I work my way up the chart. Basically, it's a receptor interaction that's happening. Okay, so in RxNorm, yeah, if you wanted to get all opioid antagonists, you could do that because RxNorm has defined that rich set of data that relates things to each other. I can look at disposition. It's an opioid receptor antagonist containing product. So interesting things here in RxNorm. This one that's super tiny on your screen, but this is showing the different types of disorders or diseases that naloxone is intended to treat. And so drug sensitivity is one of those, reversing the side effects of a drug, opioid-related disorders. There's respiration disorders and septic shock. So those are all the different things that naloxone can be used for, and that's all coded in RxNorm. Okay, so that's RxNorm. And the third one I want to cover is SNOMED CT. So SNOMED originally stood for Systematized Nomenclature of Medicine, and CT standing for clinical terms. They have done away with what the acronym stands for, so now it's just referred to as SNOMED, but that's what it was originally. It's used in NEMSIS patient care reports for allergies, specifically environmental or food allergies, and procedures. And then there's 7 specific SNOMED codes that are allowed for medication administered. Those are for the administration of blood products. So NEMSIS is primarily using SNOMED for procedures, but as I showed in the beginning, SNOMED covers a ton of stuff. SNOMED is an international standard, and then it has country-specific editions. So we're going to look at the US edition today. It kind of started back in 1965 with the systematized nomenclature of pathology, and then became SNOMED in 1975 and SNOMED CT in 2002. In 2007, the International Health Terminology Standards Development Organization was formed to be the steward of the SNOMED CT standard. The procedures that NEMSIS uses SNOMED for represent only 10% of the codes in SNOMED. Here are all the different semantic tags in SNOMED. I know this will be quite tiny on your screen. Procedure is one. Regime/therapy is another. Those are typically the ones used in NEMSIS to document procedures that EMS did. But you see there's a whole bunch of other semantic tags that every code in SNOMED CT has been given one of these tags, and it covers all kinds of stuff. There's a top-level hierarchy in SNOMED CT. So there is actually a code in SNOMED CT that is the root code that stands for a SNOMED CT concept. We're going to look at that in a sec. And then SNOMED is hierarchical. In fact, it's a multi-inheritance hierarchy. So under the root SNOMED CT concept, these are the top-level concepts right below that. So procedure is one of those top-level concepts, and then it has a bunch of children under it. But each code can also have multiple parents that it relates up to. So I'm going to show you that. In this screenshot, I've taken pulse oximetry monitoring. That is a procedure. And you can see here that it actually has 2 parents. Measurement of oxygen saturation at periphery. It also has a parent of oximetry procedure. So that's the multiple inheritance hierarchy. Okay, let's go to SNOMED CT. And Chris, if you could put the link in the chat. Again, on your own, feel free to browse SNOMED CT yourself while I'm showing this to you here. I'm going to point out that I'm using the United States release. There are other country-specific editions, so you'll want to make sure you use US. And I'm using the September 1st, 2024 version of SNOMED CT. So this just came out a week and a half ago. Okay, this is the pulse oximetry procedure that I was talking about. Let me blow things up a little bit. And as I said, it has 2 parents. So I can drill in those parents up the hierarchy. If I go up the oximetry parent, I see that it is a measurement procedure, which is an evaluation procedure, which is a procedure by method, which is a procedure, which is the child of the SNOMED CT concept, the root of all SNOMED codes. If I drill up the hierarchy for this measurement of oxygen saturation at periphery, then I get that it is, that itself has 2 parents. There's an oxygen saturation measurement procedure and a ratio measurement. So let's go up the ratio measurement, which is a measurement procedure, and then you'll see that's an evaluation procedure, et cetera, up to the root. Or if we look at the oxygen saturation measurement procedure, that is a child of these 2 parents, and we could go up through those. So it's a blood gas analysis as well as a protein measurement procedure. So that's the richness of this multiple hierarchy in SNOMED. I want to show you a few other things. Let me show you the children, right? So there's a procedure code for a pulse oximetry procedure, but you could get more specific because it has 3 children. So you could do continuous, intermittent, or overnight pulse oximetry. Each of those has its own code. You can see over here that there's a bunch of metadata about this procedure: the type of scale, the type of method, the type of device that's used, the property that's being measured, the component that it relates to in the patient. So lots of information there. We have synonyms for the label all there. And let's look at a few other things. I'm going to go to, let's see. I think I was going to go over to taxonomy here, if I remember right. Nope, sorry. It's going to be the device. Pulse oximeter. I clicked on that. SNOMED has a code for a pulse oximeter device. So not a procedure, but just the device, because remember, SNOMED covers lots of stuff. And so we can see that a pulse oximeter is a child of an oxygen analyzer device. And you could work your way up that hierarchy there, or work your way down the hierarchy for different specific types of pulse oximeters. I'm going to go back to my pulse oximetry measurement and look at details. And so I'll get stuff here like different synonyms that can be used for this. And then also there's those that metadata I was talking about previously, that it is an oximetry procedure, it's a quantitative scale, so on, all kinds of information there about what a pulse oximetry procedure is. And then the diagram tab essentially lays out a diagram of that information. So SNOMED has defined all of these connections and relationships around a pulse oximetry procedure. So it's not just a code with a label, but it's related to other things. Okay, I saw a thing in the chat. I missed which elements require RxNorm. So let's go back to that one. These 3 elements here: medication allergies, current medications, and medication administered. Those are the ones that NEMSIS uses. Okay, going forward to, let's see. Okay, yeah, so that was SNOMED. So lots of rich information. I hope you'll see that in all 3 of these data sets, it's not just a code with a label. There's all kinds of rich information about each of these codes that could be leveraged for understanding data, whether it be EMS data or some other medical data. And so what I want to kind of wrap with is what I see as opportunities in EMS for the use of code systems. One is an opportunity for the NEMSIS data standard itself to be updated to support more of the code systems as specified in US CDI. So that's an interoperability or compatibility issue. If US CDI says, hey, these 4 code systems can be used for this concept, but NEMSIS only supports one of those 4 code systems, that can limit interoperability with other healthcare systems. Okay, and then I see opportunities for products, for all of the NEMSIS certified products out there, for any analytical data systems that are using EMS data and trying to visualize it or provide analytical capabilities. And my recommendations would be, 1, those systems need to deploy these code system updates regularly. That should be an automated process where, whether it's every month for RxNorm or every twice a year for SNOMED or once a year for ICD-10, that they're getting the most recent updates quickly right after they're published and getting them processed into their systems and available for EMS providers to use. And my other recommendations are to expose the rich metadata of these code systems, the hierarchies, the relationships, and the semantic information. So when you're doing analytical reporting, again, back to that naloxone example, you want to know every time naloxone was given. You shouldn't have to go look up the 200 different codes that represent some form of naloxone in RxNorm and search for all of those codes. A well-designed analytical reporting system would allow you to say, give me everything where naloxone was the ingredient of the medication that was administered, and it'll go follow the relationships, find all of the 200 plus codes, and tell you every time a medication was given that had naloxone as an ingredient. Or in ICD-10, right? I want to get all the times that someone was uh, hit or bit or anything by an animal. You shouldn't have to go look up all the specific codes. It's part of a hierarchy. There's also the index with the relationships. So that's kind of my call to action is to request these things of your vendors, that they provide these richer capabilities for analyzing your EMS data. If you want to get deeper into kind of the technical details of these different code systems, then I'll take you over to the NEMSIS website. And Chris, if you could put the link in the chat as well. Under the technical resources menu, there's a define lists page. And on the define list page, if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see a link to a document called External Standards Maintenance. This is kind of a white paper, and it goes through our ICD-10, RxNorm, and SNOMED in detail. So similar to what I covered today, but really jumping into like, where do you actually go to get the data files? How would they be processed into a data system in a way that would extract that information from the hierarchy or the relationships? How often would you need to update the code system? All of that technical stuff would be in this document. So I'd point you to that. All right, so with that, I have plenty of time today for questions or discussion. So Chris, if you'd be able to open it up for people, and feel free to raise your hand or unmute or put something in the chat. We'll see what questions we can discuss today. Wow, super quiet. Anyone with a question or something you want to bring up for discussion today? Someone's got to have a burning question. Okay, well, Chris, not hearing any questions on my end. Did you see anything I missed?
Doug Taylor wanted to give you a smiley emoji.
Oh, yes. Okay. I
So
saw the
there
smile.
you go. Yes. Wanted to acknowledge that there. Awesome. Hey, this is the consequence of explaining it so perfectly that there's absolutely no questions for it.
Maybe. Yeah.
So, if you do have a refrigerator moment where you do think about this presentation later while you're in the fridge getting yourself a drink and you wanted to ask a question, more than welcome to head back to the NEMSIS website, open a ticket, we'll get the question to the right person. Um, Thank you, Mike, for the compliment. Thank you very much. Thanks everybody for making it today. Like I said, we usually do these trainings on the first Tuesday of the month. So if you watch for that, that is our usual cadence for the training. I appreciate everybody moving schedules to be able to accommodate today as the training day. Big virtual round of applause for Josh. Thank you so much for all this information here and the links. You can continue to go and check out that information. This video will be posted on our YouTube channel so that you can come back if there was something that you wanted to revisit or share with a colleague or someone else, then you can come back to this information. It will be on our YouTube channel and on the NEMSIS website. If you want to be notified about this type of event and other things that are going on in the NEMSIS orbit, you are also welcome to head to the NEMSIS website. In the upper right-hand corner, there's a link that says subscribe to the mailing list. And so if you get to there, then we will get you on the mailing list. You'll be notified about this training and other events. Also put in a plug for the NEMSIS annual meeting, which is coming up very soon. If you haven't signed up for that, we encourage you to get over to the NEMSIS website. It is on the main banner of the website. You can click there and all the information that you need about the annual meeting is there as well. And also, last thing that just a reminder that you can follow us on social media on Facebook, X, and LinkedIn. And if you have a chance, and on YouTube, and if you have a chance on LinkedIn, please follow Josh as well. He is always posting about great information, conferences that he's attending, and articles that he's reading. So I always really appreciate jumping onto LinkedIn and having new information from Josh. Thank you again, Josh, for all this great information doing the presentation today. Thanks everybody for attending, and I hope you have a great rest of your week. Talk to you soon.
Have a great day, everyone.